Pinnacles National Park is located in Central California, east of Monterey, and actually there's two sides of it. You can go in from the western side, and you can go from the eastern side, which is the side that Nancy and I have gone through a couple times, actually 2-3 times now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're getting there, we need to do it a lot more. This park is absolutely amazing. From the eastern side that we went through, San Benito County is your gateway region, so you've got like Hollister and San Juan Bautista, Paisanos, and Tres Pinos as your gateway communities and places to go hang out when you go to the park. But this is a park of geological significance. It's very fascinating. There's, big caves, and there's big spires, rock spires, and then there's like these beautiful meadows and wildflowers in the spring, and there's chaparral scrub and oak woodlands. It's just an amazing park.
Don't forget the turkeys that walk with you.
There's turkeys, but turkeys follow me everywhere. They may think I'm one of them, but I'm just kidding. And they've got California condors. They're known for that. And so we've got Park Ranger Elizabeth Hudick back on Big Blend Radio today to talk all about the park's biodiversity, because, like I was saying, you can see wildflowers, and then all of a sudden you're under oak trees, and then you could be climbing way up high and looking at a condor or a turkey. So there's just so much going on out there. The park website is nps.gov/PINN for Pinnacles, and you can find out more also about the whole area if you go to discoversanbenitocounty.com, and of course just go to nationalparktraveling.com, our park travel website, and just type in Pinnacles, and you'll find all our past interviews and articles on the region as well. Welcome back to the show, Beth. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. It's great to be here.
We're excited because we get to talk about birds and butterflies and condors and animals, and it's so exciting about Pinnacles National Park because, like I was saying, the habitats are so diverse. Is that what helps, kind of make up all these different species that you have? So biodiverse, I want to talk about what biodiversity really means too, but is it because of the varied habitats that attract so many different species of mammals and butterflies and over 400 bee species?
Yes, that's exactly right. So we have 5 different very distinct ecosystems here, from riparian by the creeks to grasslands to oak woodlands, rock and scree, which are the Pinnacles and the Talus Caves, and oak woodlands. I think I already mentioned those. The chaparral is the other one as well. So each animal has a specific habitat, has an ecosystem that they prefer. Some have a couple, but because of all of this diversity of plant life, then we have a diversity of animal life as well, and they have a very strong relationship between the two.
It's exciting too because you're saying they're different animals are going to stay in their habitat. Do they migrate around in the park? I know birds migrate and stuff, and they go from north to south and all of that good thing. But does it happen within the park? Do any of the animals go? Okay, it's winter. I know in wintertime you get waterfalls and rain and lushness, and then spring here comes the wildflowers. Very popular time in the park, so everyone look at going midweek. I'm just saying right now. But summer it gets golden. Do any of the animals move with the season?
They sure do, yeah. And so some animals will move from just to and from water sources, which is a seasonal thing, but some animals will also move with elevation. The higher elevations, you'll have a little bit cooler than the lower, and so you might see some movement there as well. So in different seasons, you can find different animals in different places.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, and do you have any animals that hibernate?
Absolutely. One of our most famous residents, besides the California condor, is the Townsend's big-eared bat, and it hibernates in Bear Gulch Cave.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Oh, cool. That's so neat. Do you ever do, I know that you guys do such an amazing programs and, park ranger talks and walks, and I know like at night you also have stargazing. It's another big attraction to the park. Do you ever do things where you take people in the caves at night so they can see the bats, or would that be like a no-no?
Oh, you actually wouldn't see the bats. They're in a special little section of the cave which we close off whenever they're around.
Okay.
They're really sensitive. So they have big ears, as their name implies, and they hear a lot, and they get disturbed very easily. So we try to avoid the areas where they are. And in fact, that area of the cave where they'll hibernate, where they'll live in the summer as well, we close that off completely when they're giving birth.
Mm-hmm.
We close it off just the upper part when they're present, and we only open it for maybe a couple of weeks in the spring and a couple of weeks in the fall when they vacate the cave completely.
Wow. So are there any chances for people to be able to see them or
Sure.
not?
Yeah. You don't know for sure where the bats will be. For the most part, they congregate in the back of the cave and the upper portion, but you do see them occasionally in the lower portion of the cave. And, of course, in the evening or in the morning, you'll see them flying around. Not this time of year because they're hibernating, but in the spring, summer, and fall, it's a great time to see them fly.
Oh, excellent.
See, bats are so interesting. Lisa and I always, on our morning walks or evening walks, we know that we're going to see the little short, tiny bats. And we've watched bats come into where we live in the middle of the day recently, and we're still like, what is going on with that? But, hello. But, and we've heard that, that it could be an illness that they have, and that illness is sometimes carried into the caves by people. Do you know about that?
Well, there is a very serious bat disease now. It doesn't affect humans at all, but we sometimes carry it inadvertently. It's called white nose syndrome. And
that's it.
It causes this fungus around the bat's nose, and a lot of times what it'll do is cause bats to wake from hibernation early when there's no food to be found, and so they end up starving to death. And there's enormously high rates of bat mortality when this white nose syndrome is found in a colony. So it can wipe out 90 or 95% of a colony of bats very quickly.
Wow. And where does that come from, that fungus?
Well, we don't really know exactly how it's transmitted or where it started, but we saw it first in caves along the East Coast, and it has slowly migrated, stopped around the Mississippi River for a time, but it was actually recently found in Washington State.
Oh, wow.
So we think maybe it might be transported on people's clothes or gear as they're going from cave to cave. So a great way to protect the bats of any cave is to thoroughly clean your gear before going into a new cave. That includes your shoes, your clothes, and anything you might have carried with you, like a backpack.
That's really interesting because I know also when we were in Sequoia National Park, we went into the cave. They have an incredible cave system, too, and you guys aren't that far. I mean, that's the one thing I want to tell people. We always think about Yosemite, Kings Canyon, Sequoia. People will do that, that trip.
Yeah.
But Pinnacles is not that far away. In fact, you can drive from Pinnacles straight on the same road all the way to Sequoia Park and vice versa. So you could do this nice loop and then go up into San Francisco, and there's a whole bunch of parks there. And, okay, I'll tell everybody it's just a big road trip. I could see a new article coming on that.
Alrighty, let's go.
I know, right? Anyway, so when we were in Sequoia National Park and we went in the Crystal Cave, they made us, walk through this, we had to clean the bottom of our shoes and things like that and be tested. I think they had to check your shoes or something, and if your shoes were clean, and I don't know, then they let you in. And it was like they closed it down in periodical times or something like that. And I think it's probably going to be the same thing, right?
Yeah, so they're guarding against that same disease.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So this is so interesting because one of the reasons I wanted to talk about biodiversity, and I'm so glad we get into bats. I want to do a whole bat show because they're cool.
I love bats.
They're amazing.
I know. When you think about, conservation and, having all these different animals, I mean, you've got 49 mammals, just going on your website, 140 bird species, and you've got amphibians, 71 butterfly species, 41 dragonflies and damselflies, more than 400 bee species. I mean, and that's, that's just on the animal side. And then the plant side, it's crazy. I mean, we were there in spring with the wildflowers, and I was like, it's like California's Mount Rainier in a way, with how much we saw. But I look at it being so important when you think about the park and what it's done in conservation. Look at what's happened with the condors and protecting these species like the bats, because as and I know that you've got a lot of big ranch country out in your area, so it's nice, especially on the eastern side, that you have these open areas. But the park itself, I mean, there's a difference when you walk into a national park, and you can already tell, like, this has been protected. So when you look at, like, bats and things like that, a lot of us at home, we may be near a cave or something, and there's bats in there or flying around, but we don't know how to protect the bats. So it's so important what parks do. Have you seen any increase since you've been in the park? Any growth in populations of animals, and in regards to the fact that you guys are protecting the place and making sure that we can still have a good time as human beings, but keeping us from hurting the animals or the plants?
Yes, well, I haven't noticed much of a difference, which I think maybe is a good thing because the species have been here all along. I haven't been in the park for too long, just about a year and a half. But we're seeing incredible biodiversity here, I think in part because we have complete ecosystems. We think about the big things, and that the California condor is easy to see and it's exciting, but it doesn't exist by itself. So in order to have the big animals that everybody can see, we need the whole ecosystem to be pretty well intact. We need down to the small insects running around. We need all levels of that, as well as clean air and water and soil as well.
Okay. It's interesting because, we do tend to, as humans, when we go into a park, look for the big ones, when we lived in Africa, everything was about the big five. And I'm like, there's the big five, there's only five. There's
impalas are cool too,
I know,
man.
there's so many more animals than the big five. And people would just kind of I led a couple of tours there, and it was kind of frustrating sometimes when the people saw the big five. Once they checked that off their list, they're like, okay, let's go to the hotel. It's like, well, then wait a minute.
Yeah, and
that's because there's so much more, because the understanding of what it takes for one of the big five to exist starts with the insects and the plants. You're not going to get a rhinoceros if you don't have the food for the rhinoceros to eat. And it was kind of like, okay, well, we've seen a lion, let's move on. I don't know. And sometimes I think it's good to kind of crawl through a park. Get on your hands and knees like a kid. Get out there and crawl.
Well, yeah, when you say there's complete ecosystems, I always think this is one of the coolest things about nature is that web of life of, this insect works with this plant to do this, and then this helps this butterfly. So can you give us an example of that so, we can understand a little bit more about how a full ecosystem works? So maybe give us one of the smallest, living things in Pinnacles National Park, even though I really believe that your rocks are alive, your big caves and rocks and everything. I think they're alive. But anyway, because I talk to them. But give us maybe a small critter or a flower or plant, and how it builds up from there, and how that whole system works. Can you give us a small example of that?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
I know,
There's so many examples. It's just wrap my head around the whole thing. It all starts really with the plant life. So we have so many different plants to think about and to talk about here, but even just the small plants that grow out by the reservoir and along the creeks are homes and food for the insects that live nearby. And then the frogs, we have endangered California red-legged frogs that'll eat the insects. And then we have snakes that'll eat the frogs, and hawks that'll eat the snakes. So there's all of these interconnected things. And then, of course, when the hawk dies or when something dies, then the carrion eaters, like the condors or the turkey vultures, will break that down, or the fungus as well. So we need all pieces to that ecosystem.
Perfect. That was exactly it. Yeah. Because when you think about that, it's the balance factor of what conservation and parks that are have that, where life can go on. The animals know what they're doing. When you're saying if it's too much of an increase, that means somebody's the ecosystem is out of whack at that point, right? So you have to have. Yeah, it's like how coyotes became a problem when wolves were being hunted out. It's become this change. And it's, when you take out your apex species, then it changes the whole rhythm and the whole part of it. So when we talk about having over 400 bee species,
That's amazing.
That's got to scare people from going to the park. And I want to tell everybody it was totally fine when we were there the last few times we went hiking. We've been there about three, four times now, actually, I think about it. And we didn't get bitten or stung, I should say, by a bee.
Yeah, I think it's hard for some people to get excited about over 400 bee species. It's not one of those things that you're like, ooh, yes, bees. But they really are incredible, and again, an important part of the ecosystem. But most of those species you wouldn't even recognize as a bee. It's not your big honeybees. A lot of them are even smaller than your fingernail, your pinky fingernail. So small little insects just pollinating the plants and helping the wildflowers to grow, which everybody loves to see.
Yeah, and the wildflowers are super cool. And I remember seeing like all the monkey flowers in bloom and how they move according to like if like they do that little moving thing. I can't explain it. People have to go look at the flower, but they move. They have like a little mouth.
You mean like a snapdragon kind of thing?
They are kind of like that. One of the things that tripped me out the most was your ferns. I know everyone wants the wildflowers, but the ferns were super cool. And you had like these air plant things living on the rocks.
Oh, yeah. The Dudleya are there. And it seems to just cling to bare rock like it doesn't need any kind of resources at all. But, of course, it's finding a little bit of nutrients in there as well. And
so
the ferns are something
down the rock? Sorry.
Not really, no. They're finding the dirt in the crevices. They might eventually kind of wear it away. All plants will erode very slowly the rock, but mostly it's just kind of clinging to the dirt that's in the cracks and crevices.
Wow. How interesting, because when we looked at it, it kind of reminded me of the Everglades, even though I know you're not swampy, but and you don't have gators. But you do have snakes, and they're cool too. I don't want to scare people, but I want them to understand how important they are. But when we saw those plants, it kind of reminded me of how bromeliads would just go live in a tree, and that was what you see in your garden shop, your garden center. Here's these plants like bromeliads, and now they're living in trees and they're in the wild, and there's something just so magnificent when you see plants living their true. In their true habitat, being totally natural. They haven't been changed and altered for your garden, and that's what happens. We've actually interviewed a number of garden, hybridizers and the tissue culture people that were doing things, and it was really fascinating, but they would change things for people's gardens because our backyards aren't the same as what nature, majority, I should say, what nature is, unless you live out in the boonies. And it's really interesting. They change the plants, but then when you go in a park and you see the plant just thrive in its own habitat, I almost feel like people should go into a park to understand native plants so that when they go home, maybe they'll consider planting more native plants to make their little backyard into a little park. You know what I mean? Because they'll get more birds and butterflies that way. So do you do any kind of classes for people to understand the native plants that they are seeing?
We don't have any specific classes that we offer, but we occasionally will do nature hikes, either for wildflowers or for native plants, and kind of talk a little bit about those. We also have volunteer opportunities, too, where people can come in and remove invasive species. They also will collect some native seeds occasionally to help those native plants survive.
Wow.
Cool.
So now the ferns. What's up with all the ferns? Because it's so prehistoric,
I know, it's Jurassic Park.
I know. We feel like it's Jurassic Park when you're hiking in there. It's like it's so crazy because we've been out in the grasslands, and the next thing you know, you're in like a wildflower meadow, and they turn around the corner, and next thing you know, you expect a dinosaur to come hang out with you in the ferns.
Oh, yes. The ferns are very charismatic as a plant can be. Those giant chain ferns that you're seeing are the ones I think that really stick out. But we have a lot of different species of ferns as well. And you're going to see ferns in wetter areas. So you'll go hiking in the park, and you'll be hiking through chaparral for miles, and you'll think it's so dry out here. But then you'll stumble upon a creek bed, and you'll see these beautiful giant ferns. And they're just unexpected, but they belong there as well.
Okay, so there is a factor of like you do look like you're underwater. Not you personally, but it's like it is like the park is like could have been underwater for years, which probably was. I'm not good at all of that really intense geology and everything, but when you see all the lichen, you even have like a lichen species list. I mean, to me it looks like we're underwater and the lichen is like coral. That's what I'm saying. I feel like we could go swimming, but there's the Bear Gulch Reservoir, but this is a huge part of it. And a lot of us will just go, oh, it's a lichen, but on one rock we could be seeing numerous species of lichen, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So you'll see a lot of different colors on the rock. You'll see bright greens and oranges and browns, and it's all lichen, which is in itself a really interesting phenomenon. It's a symbiotic relationship between fungus and algae. That one is supplying the energy, and the other is kind of supplying the place to live. And they're just beautiful. We have this amazing lichen that hangs off the trees, the blue oaks especially. It's called lace lichen, and it almost looks like Spanish moss that just drapes from the trees, but it's another different species of lichen.
So, and it's still, you would consider that a plant, or is it its own deal?
Ooh, that's
because now I'm kind of thinking
it's like mushrooms are not mushrooms are their own
right.
thing.
So it's kind of in between. Yeah. I'm not sure what the exact classification is, but it's that kind of combo of algae and fungus that make it different.
Yeah, because it's really interesting when you look at it, because the colors are always really bright, or at least the ones you notice are bright, and it seems like they shouldn't be, because it looks like they should be like, it's like mushrooms. Some mushrooms are just kind of white or gray or brown, and then there's the other ones that are red with polka dots on it. It looks like somebody painted them. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think
there must be a purpose for that color in there.
Now, do any animals or insects feed off of lichen that you know of?
That's a great question. I'm not sure the answer to that.
I
know they're useful, but I'm not sure if they're edible. Probably
I think
something.
Maybe insects might.
Yeah, just because of the color and everything. Now, the other thing, the oak trees, this is such a big deal. You have oaks, but then, a lot of us will think, oh, it's an oak. But then you have the valley oak, the blue oak, the coast live oak,
Yes, we have 6 different species of oak in the park, and a lot of them don't look like what you would expect an oak to be. I grew up in the eastern part of the country where oaks looked a lot different, but out here, a lot of times they're mistaken for holly. The live oaks have kind of points on their edges, and they're evergreen, so they don't lose their leaves.
Oh.
But then we do have the giant valley oaks and the blue oaks, which are deciduous, and they'll drop their leaves in the winter.
Wow. And so... And everyone, if you go on nps.gov/PINN, PIN, you'll be able to see all these different lists of the plants and at least get an overview of it, because it's, I mean, I don't even know where to start. It's like, okay, let's have this conversation, but it's like there's so much of what you have, and it's interesting. You talk about exotic plants, and, you were saying about invasive species, and so this happens all over. You've got a yellow star thistle. I remember when we were there was some big cleanup of something going on with the thistle. Is that's part of the volunteer opportunities you're talking about?
Yes. So we have a habitat restoration crew which will work every day in the spring, especially pulling invasive species and working on controlling them. And they've made a huge progress, especially in the bottomlands and the grasslands on the east side of the park. But there's so much to be done, and we do service projects. Once a month, there's a big open public service project, but then we also have volunteer groups come in, like scout troops and school groups. And they'll work to try to restore the way the park looked before humans were here.
Wow. That's a big task, because, I mean, if you live somewhere nearby the park and you had a garden and you had all these exotics, and then the birds come and eat part of your plant, and then they fly to the park and poop, leave a little seed, and then here comes an exotic plant growing in the park.
Yes, wow. Or the wind carries them in.
Yeah.
They can be on the soles of people's shoes.
Yeah.
So I feel like now every time we go into a park, we need to clean our shoes.
Yeah.
And dust off your backpack.
Idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
actually.
I was just thinking, there's these things that we can do, as visitors to the park, that those little things could really make a huge difference, and you never think about it. It's like you never, as guests, we don't, and I never thought about the bottom of my shoes. I only thought about it from the cave that we were in, but it didn't dawn on me that I could be bringing in invasives, you know. So I'm going to do that from now on. I'm going to clean my shoes because you never know where I stand. Yeah. My boots go everywhere, so that's bad. I don't want to hurt anything. So
that's a great idea.
I think there's just little things we can do to help, you know, make these places or keep them biodiverse as they are. Reptiles. Let's talk about that. So we've talked about bees. We've talked about bats, invasives. Let's talk about reptiles. 22 reptiles, and I know Nancy and I saw a couple different snakes while we were there. I think one was a king snake, but then now I'm like going back and forth or not whether I really did see it was a king snake because there's one that kind of looks like another snake. Little yellow bands around it, little rings. It was kind of thin. It could have been a baby, but I got confused because we saw a baby king snake out here, and then when I was investigating further, it looks like there's another snake. So I don't know. But anyway, I don't want to confuse people. But,
sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. And king snakes, actually, there's a couple of different kinds of king snakes. So you'll see one out here that looks very different than ones you might see in Arizona.
Yeah.
So just because it didn't look like what you saw doesn't mean it wasn't a king snake.
This is the thing, because it's so hard to identify everything because, like birds, seriously, birds, like, stop it, man. Now you're a juvenile and you're a male and a female and they swap roles later and, you know what I mean, they look different. I mean, it's like, it's so difficult to identify, but what I find is so neat and what I think is so great about social media, we were talking about this the other day, when you go in a park, you don't necessarily want to be on your phone and talking and doing things. You want to, you know, absorb all the little things what we're talking about. And you take all these pictures and then you learn about what you were photographing. So when you're on Instagram, I'm a big fan of Instagram because I think people are learning their species because otherwise they don't know what to say about what they saw. And they can't tell something other than go, I don't know.
There's also a wonderful tool called iNaturalist. And if you snap a picture of it, you can tag where it was and where you saw it and put it out there, and then it's citizen science at work. So other people might look at it and say, I know what that is, and they'll give you an idea, and maybe somebody else will say, no, that's not quite right. This fits that more. So it's something that anybody can do, and you know, we build off of each other's knowledge base.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. I
need it. I need it because I get all confused. I'm like, no, it looks like this. And I remember, you know, photographing a moth in the park and getting it wrong. And I was so sure I was right. And then it was like, no, you're wrong. I'm like, okay, you know, but it's cool. You go out there and you learn. And I think that's where we start to find all these fun and fascinating facts of all these critters that at some point we may have not thought a bee is cool or a snake. But they're so fascinating in what they do. So just on snakes, some tips for people to be precautious when they're you know on their hiking to obviously look where you're stepping, right? But I do want to touch on that because I know you know snakes can be unnerving to people, but they're really beautiful. They're so cool.
They absolutely are. Yeah, snakes are one of my favorite animals. They're so misunderstood. We only have one venomous snake in the park. The rest are completely harmless. But even our venomous snake, the western rattlesnake, is pretty harmless. It's not aggressive at all. No snake wants to bite a person. You know, they're much smaller than we are, so they can't eat us. They don't want to waste their energy trying to fight us. So the best thing to do is to leave the snakes alone. If you give them room to get away, that's what they're going to do every time.
Yeah, I think it's only when they're cornered, and that's pretty much most animals are like that. You know, it's when they feel there's no other choice.
Absolutely.
If you corner an animal, if you tease an animal. We were in a park once, unfortunately, where we saw people run after a bear. We're like, man, that's a dumb thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, we're like,
if you leave it alone.
And I think, they found pretty quickly that wasn't the way to behave. But, there's a temptation, especially now it seems more with cell phones, being able to snap pictures quickly, that people forget what they're doing. It's like the selfie thing's kind of crazy. So people need to be a little bit more, aware of their surroundings and what they're doing. and put the cell phone away. It's good for pictures, but not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a balance. There's a balance to be
Yeah.
had. So one thing too is to go into the visitor center before you start going out there and snapping photos and looking at things too, so that you can
what you're
start
doing.
to know more about what you're doing and seeing. Yeah. Amphibians. You were talking about frogs. Are like the 8 amphibian species? Are they all frogs or?
No, we have some newts as well, or some. Sorry, not salamanders. We have a couple of salamanders and an ensatina, which is beautiful. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly now that I think about it, but beautiful salamanders, all different colors.
Oh man, that is so
and
rare.
So you don't see those.
To see.
Yeah, you don't see them on most of your hikes. They're going to be in those riparian areas as well because they need that moisture. Yeah. But we have several different species of frogs and toads, and then some salamanders as well.
And then the mammals. We have to talk about the mammals because that's a cool thing. So
sure.
We're looking at deer. I know you got deer out there,
Yeah.
And so, give us kind of an overview of your mammal species because 49 is a lot, right?
Sure,
pretty
absolutely.
Big.
Now, mostly they're going to be, most are bats and rodents. Those are the most common. A lot of different species of both. We have about 15 different species of bats that live in the park. But then we also have some larger mammals as well. We have 2 different kinds of dogs, with the gray fox and the coyote, and 2 different kinds of cats, the bobcat and the mountain lion.
Cool.
We'll also have raccoons and skunks and badgers and mule deer, of course, and just a wide variety.
Badgers are cool. Don't go like here, kitty, to a badger, even though it's not a cat. Just don't do that. Don't mess with them.
I remember once in Yellowstone watching a coyote chase a badger, and the badger went down its burrow. And a few seconds later, the badger, I guess he went in, he turned around, and he came back out and chased the coyote. I was like, whoa, look at that.
Wow. We saw a coyote run. Chase a deer. Remember in Yosemite?
Yeah, that was funny too. But I want to ask about the bats for a second here.
She's back on the bats. We need to just do a show on bats for you.
I was just wondering because you have so many different kinds of bats. Will they go, like when there's a colony, would there be different species, or are they going to no, this is my turf and you go nest somewhere else?
You might see them flying around together, but they're going to pretty much stick with their own kind to roost and things. And some like big groups, and some like to be a little bit more solitary. It just really depends on the species.
Wow.
Some of the bats too will hibernate, and some will migrate.
Oh, wow, so cool, man! I want to come back. I'm itchy for a hike. I'm like, we
even have one bat that you can hear audibly, which is kind of unusual. You usually can't hear the frequencies that bats emit, as they're so high pitched. But we have a bat called the mastiff bat, which is a fairly big bat, and you can actually hear it chirp in the evenings if you're here in the spring or summer.
Cool.
So this means people need to go camping.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Or come for a night hike.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things is to understand a park at night, because then you see the whole other side of what's going on, because some animals only come out at night and some hunt at night, and it's like all these different things happen, and even plant life changes at night. There's moon plants and plants that they don't want the sun, they want the moonlight, So that's a whole other thing. We haven't done a night hike in Pinnacles.
You need to. And you'll hear the owls, too. We have about 6 different kinds of owls that you could hear at night.
Oh, wow. I want to come move into the park right now. I'm just I want to see owls. We have owls out here. It's pretty. They're neat. We saw them. We have a couple out where we're based here in Tucson, and, we go out on really early morning walks, and it's really cool because we watch sunrises. But you see, depending on how early you go out and what season, you will see, the change of birds over the seasons, but them all waking up or, closing down, So the owls are at their last part, but we've seen them do, these dances almost, like a mating dance maybe, on the top of, what are those
the poplar trees.
The poplar trees at the very top. I don't know how they're balancing. I'm like, dude, you're going to fall down. I know you have wings, but they do these things where they're you're
trying to balance.
I think they're doing this courtship dance, and it's so beautiful and cool. It's amazing. It's amazing. So
Yeah.
to be able to but at night you'd probably see a lot more. So that's super neat, super neat. So you were talking about birds, 140 bird species. Obviously the California condor. Real quick, we should touch on that. Can you give everyone a little overview of this program, because it's been very, very successful? So you're like the release site for captive bred condors, right? Am I getting that part right?
Yes, so we do. We release condors that have been captively bred. We also have condors that have bred in the wild out here. This year we had, or this past year we had a chick hatch and fledge for the second time in a row.
Oh, cool.
So things are doing well. We have both here at Pinnacles, and they're wild and free flying now. And at any given day, you stand a good chance of seeing this bird that was once almost extinct. In 1982, they were down to just 22 birds in the wild.
Wow.
But they've made a comeback, and now there's over 250 flying out there.
So when the condors are released, is there any, like, do you just go, bye-bye, have fun, or do they have to, see ya, no, or do they have to have, like, sometimes when you release animals into the wild, you have to do it by stages, and they have to kind of learn how to be wild?
Yes, so we do have a facility here that will keep the captive condors in for a while so they can interact with some of the wild condors. They can see them flying around. They can learn a little bit more. They get some training in a way when they're in their facility originally, just learning from the adult condors. But they have a little acclimation time here in the park as well. And, of course, every single condor has a tag with a radio frequency. So we can keep track of these birds, and we can make sure that they're doing all right, that we make sure that we check in on them from time to time.
Cool. Priscilla, our pink sock monkey, she's our travel mascot. She got to hang out with Callie, the condor, over at the park.
Oh, nice.
Your stuffed little condor. We have photos of her. She had a good time. And the bird species I want to touch on, too, because you've got the condor, which is unique, and we've seen bald eagles out in your region, which is incredible, golden eagles, but also all these little warblers, and I have to bring up the magpie, like the magpie that because it's endemic to your area, and they're so beautiful. The feathers are that bluey green and that big yellow bill. I mean, they are the coolest birds ever, like ever. That's my bird.
Well, we do. I think all of the corvids in this area are just very charismatic. So you have the magpie, but you also have the beautiful Steller's jay and the California scrub jay, crows and ravens, of course, as well.
Wow. So there's a lot going on. And then
the acorn woodpeckers too.
Oh, I love them.
They're the monkeys.
They are so much fun to watch.
I know. They're like everything. I mean, it's true. I mean, they're super cool. So, what would you think that when we, we've got all the dragonflies too, which we saw a lot of them. So many butterfly species. I mean, you had just so many butterflies out there. It's just so beautiful to see. What would you go? It's like, okay, what would be some bird species that are there that people would not expect, other than the condor? Because now we've talked a lot about the condor.
Well, we have a lot of variety of birds out here, just an enormous amount, I think. And you'll see some that are in different habitats as well, like we talked about earlier. You'll see the black phoebe kind of coasting along the reservoir, picking out bugs from the water, whereas you'll see the peregrine or the prairie falcons soaring really high and nesting in the cavities of the rocks. There's just so many different varieties out here.
It's amazing. That's the thing about when an area is protected and so biodiverse. You can have such an incredible experience, and every time you go, it's going to be something different.
So we have so many different kinds of birds because we have so many different kinds of food sources for
and habitats.
Because you have so many different kinds of flowers. Yeah, so you have different kinds of insects with different kinds of flowers, which means you're going to get different kinds of birds. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it really is all connected.
How neat. And then do you have does it change in the seasons with the birds? Because aren't you going in a migratory pathway? So you've got the 140 bird species, but that's going to change according to migration season, right?
Yes, for sure. So this time of year you might see varied thrush or red-breasted sapsuckers, which you wouldn't see in the summer. And then other times of year you'll see the orioles, the beautiful yellow orioles that are out here. Very much, some birds are here year-round, and some birds are strictly migratory. Some are summer residents, some are winter residents. So it's always changing.
That's what's so cool, why you go to a park and you got to go back again and again and again and again.
You're going to see something different every time.
That's the coolest thing. It really is. Now, before you go, and thank you so much for your time, because it's always just, we appreciate it. I know that park rangers are doing multiple jobs all the time, and it's just, you guys are busy, so we appreciate it. And just to, I'm really antsy for a hike right now, but just to thinking of, I know that people are going to be seeing this in our spring issues of the magazine and going into summer, and I know it's a real popular time to go. Do you have any tips for travelers coming into the park on either side, the east or the west entrance of, just what's the best time and, what can we, other than now we need to all clean our shoes, what can we do to make it a better experience also for the habitat and for us as the visitors coming in?
Well, I highly recommend coming at off times, which might mean midweek, or it might mean early in the morning or late in the afternoon, where you have a chance to really get in depth with the park and experience some of the quiet that we have out here and some of that peace. So I think that's one of the best ways to experience the park. If you can stay overnight, or even just come at night to see a whole other side of the park, it's pretty incredible. Of course,
and I know you do a lot of programs. Go ahead.
Yeah, in taking care of the wildlife here and protecting it, the best thing to do is to give it space. They may look friendly, like the deer, the raccoons, the squirrels even. They may look really cute and cuddly, but nothing needs food. There's plenty of food for everything, and just to kind of enjoy them in their natural settings.
Well, that's the thing, too, when we're giving animals food. Like even ducks, I saw this whole thing about people would, birds and pigeons, like people would, feed bread to birds and, pigeons and ducks and things, and how bad that is for them.
That's not
even in the cities
food.
and stuff. Yeah, that it's like, and we don't, we have enough bad things in our food, so, don't pass it on to, like, the pure ones. We may put junk food in our bodies that are full of chemicals, but we don't need to do that to the critters, and, that's not cool either. And I've heard things like, like watch out, like cigarette butts and things like that, but, even what you're eating, right? Like if you have an orange or an apple, don't leave the core there thinking, I'm going back to nature.
It takes so long to decompose out here. It's a fairly dry environment, so it takes even longer than it would in a humid environment. And it can take years and years for an orange peel to biodegrade back into the earth. So take your trash with you. There are trash cans everywhere, but just be mindful of that. Another way to protect the wildlife is to pick up the microtrash that you see, the very small bits that you might not even think about. Condors will actually feed those things to their chicks. Ordinarily, they like to give them bone fragments to give them an extra source of calcium, but they see microtrash on the ground thinking that it's bone fragments, and they feed it to their chicks thinking they're giving them something healthy, and it ends up really making the chicks sick or even sometimes killing them.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Small things.
And that is a good thing to always take a trash bag and pick up trash everywhere you go as much as you can, because it does. People that, those rings around sodas, those
the tabs.
The tabs, but then also the plastic rings that go around a six-pack of sodas. The animals get their necks caught in those rings and get strangled. So there's so much we can do, especially when we're camping. We're out of our element a little bit sometimes, and depending, when was the last time we all went camping, you can be out of your element, but, maybe think about what you're taking and not, try not to bring anything. Undo the rings, the plastic rings, or don't buy things that have plastic. That's the first thing to do.
And don't leave them out on your campsite. Our raccoons are very smart. And if you walk away for just a moment, they'll be in your food.
That's so funny. I love that. I don't want them in the food, but I love raccoons. They're the coolest.
They're like little monkeys.
They're so much fun to watch. And I remember a friend of ours had this amazing fig tree. She has an organic farm in Southern California, and it was staying overnight one night, and everything goes crazy all the dogs, everybody's going crazy, and there's all the raccoons in the fig tree, and their little faces eating these figs. I'll never forget it. It was like, this is my tree, and it's cool. It's mine, it's all mine. It's so cool. And how they wash their food, it's so cool, in water. But Beth, thank you so much for joining us. Best place, I know you do a lot of programs, ranger programs. I know with the Pinnacles Foundation too, right? I know that you do a lot with them. What's the best way for people to keep up with your programs? Is it if going to the website or Facebook, Twitter? What's the best way?
Yeah, if you're looking at planning in advance, if you go to our website and you look under the calendar, it'll tell you what programs are going to be going on during your visit. Mm-hmm. We'll also post a list of regular weekly programs as well on the website. Okay, so everybody, it's nps.gov/PINN for Pinnacles. So check it out there. We have it also linked up on our site, nationalparktraveling.com. And, of course, go to discoversanbenitocounty.com because they have the information of coming in from the eastern entrance and all the different communities there, too, if you're planning out there. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and your insights and, getting us all, antsy to get out and take a hike. Well, thank you for having me. All right. You take care. You too. Take care. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.